Scarves and Spikes, Sydney, Tyler, and Tommy with you. Welcome in. Great to have you along. Whether you're watching on live stream on a Wednesday night or listening on the podcast on the Atlanta Soccer Podcast Network, we are delighted to have you along. Jason, Longshore is coming on later on. So is Keith Costigan. I actually didn't mean to say that, but I got caught off track. I meant to say Tyler and Tommy, how are you? But yeah, how are you?
Doing great.
You guys like that? My little
the ghost of Jason and Keith has already appeared. So
I know.
I thought he was behind me.
Yeah,
I know. I was like, where'd he go?
Yeah, I totally messed that up, but sorry about that. But yeah, I was able to. I feel like recover that pretty well. But yeah, I'm doing good myself. Things on the field aren't good for Atlanta United, to say the least. 3 dropped across all competitions: Memphis, Nashville, and Miami.
We promised we were not going to talk about this anymore.
Yeah. Well, let's make that the last time.
Fine, whatever.
Okay. Yeah. You have to confront your past to look at the future sometimes. So, yeah. Yeah. Not great for Atlanta United. And yeah, we'll kind of briefly touch on Miami before we get going. But yeah, huge show tonight. Keith Costigan from MLS Season Pass will be joining us, former voice of the Sounders. He'll be calling the match with Mo Adu, a gift from Mo Adu on Saturday. And I tweeted it out earlier in the week. Keith knows a thing or two about derbies. He was the former voice of the Sounders before he made the switch to MLS Season Pass. But yeah, looking forward to having him along a little bit later on. Then later, as I said, Jason Longshore. You guys know him. I don't need to introduce him. He'll be along as well. But we also have a giveaway going on, guys. I hear.
Sure do.
Is that still going on?
Yep, one night out with Sydney. Sydney's gonna take you out on the town, and you guys are gonna watch an Atlanta United game together.
And he'll show you
that is. That is not the giveaway. that is
the list.
Maybe later on the season. We'll see. Maybe later in the season. But yeah, our friends at Carmen and Diego have partnered with us to give away a King Peach enamel pin, and we'll be giving that away tonight for those that retweeted our tweet at Scarves and Spikes on Twitter, shared our post, or liked our post, I should say, on Instagram at Scarves and Spikes. Or if you comment tonight, you'll get bonus entries toward winning this pin. So yeah, go ahead and jump in the chat, and yeah, let's hear what you have to say.
All you got to do is chat, guys, just like you normally do. Nothing's got to change.
Exactly.
Get in here and bring the fire.
Exactly. And yeah, we'll announce the winner a little bit later on. But yeah, like I said, Keith Costigan a little bit, and Jason tore the let's say the back end of the show, kind of. But yeah, let's briefly touch on some things that happened outside of Atlanta United losing to Josef Martinez in Inter Miami. Some good news though. Caleb Wiley is officially going to the U20 World Cup, so big news for Caleb.
Officially official.
Officially official. Yeah. Exciting.
Knew
it was going to happen, right?
Yeah.
But then is it good news or bad news? Like
that's a good question.
And my bad news, well, I've got multiple good news. Like, good news is the kid made it, right? He's playing. Big opportunity for him. Great. The other good news, U.S. Soccer Twitter is going to stay away from Atlanta United posts for at least 1 month. 1 month, they will stay away and not say that Atlanta United kept players during a tournament, right? Because that's what always ends up happening. When Miles Robinson didn't play for Gold Cup, it was just like a camp. Like they just attacked Atlanta United Twitter. So that's another positive. But the bad news is he's not going to be playing for us. And we need him right now. He's a big spark. I mean, we're talking about playing Charlotte. How big was Caleb Wiley last Charlotte game, right? MVP of that game.
Earned him Player of the Week, actually.
Yeah, it did.
So, yeah,
the non-Heineken Player of the Week.
The Coca-Cola Young Man of the Match. Is it Young Man of the Match? Is that what we're calling it? What was your actual name for it?
The Coca-Cola, I don't know. It was somewhere around here. I don't know. I've got a whole stupid props I've done this year. The Coca-Cola boy of the match.
Boy
I
of
don't
the-
know.
The young lad of the match.
Young lad of the match. I like it better. The can't
No,
drink
but
underage.
Sponsored by
yeah,
Coca-Cola.
exactly. Yeah, but it is kind of a double-edged sword. Yeah, it's great to see Caleb getting this exposure. And hats off to him, and let's hope that A, he doesn't get injured, and B, he turns it up in Argentina. The good news is for the U.S. just kind of taking a look at the schedule, pretty light in the group stage. They're expected to get to the knockout stages by a pretty wide margin. They haven't won it since '89, or they've never won it. The farthest they've gotten, I believe, is fourth place in '89. Not sure how far they'll get. There are a lot of young players, young pieces on there. Intriguing players: Slonina, McGlynn, Justin Shea, Quinn Sullivan, just all kinds of standout
Brandon
players.
Craig, I think.
Yep, Brandon Craig, Owen Wolf, Tyler's brother, Josh's son. A good group of quality players that maybe could make some noise down there in Argentina. Again, pretty easy in the group stage for the most part, but once they get to the knockout stage, we'll be watching and seeing how far they can get, and hopefully this young group of players, who many of them will be seeing in 2026, can really take that next step.
Yeah, and you look at some of the other, I guess, clubs that are not allowing their players to be released this time around. And to Tommy's point, like, men's national team Twitter is not going to be angry at Atlanta United, but they are certainly angry at, like, Eintracht Frankfurt and a handful of other teams that are not letting, like, let's say Aronson go.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Paxton
I
Harrison.
understand the club versus country argument, and I understand it's the U20 World Cup, but I don't think that should downplay anything. I think at the end of the day, you're taking an opportunity that these kids, we'll just say it, these kids have to really, really get out on the international stage. And it's a month. If you can't handle yourself for a month without a U20 or a couple of U20s, then you've got a bigger problem, I think. So kudos to Caleb for sure. And I hate it for the rest that can't go, because they should be able to. So that's my 2 cents, but it is frustrating. It's such a great opportunity that some of these guys are going to be missing.
Yeah, and back to Eintracht Frankfurt, I was looking at the Bundesliga table, and they're mid-table. I mean, they're 43 points. I will say this. I mean, they're 5 points out of a Europa Conference League qualifier. I mean, which isn't like a better competition, but still outside chance of making a European competition, Europa League. So I could kind of see if that were the case, but at the same time, I mean, young players want to get that exposure, and again, we're just talking about this club versus country thing, and it's a lot deeper than we talk about a lot of times. So yeah, interested to know why they didn't let him go. Mark saying in the comments, Frankfurt are the DFB Pokal final, so that probably has something to do with it. But yeah, it's an opportunity. I agree, Tyler, that you don't get every day, and yeah, interesting to hear exactly why Frankfurt won't let their young player go. But from a roster standpoint, for Atlanta United, from a personnel standpoint, again, who plays for him at the end, this is a big opportunity for him to really step in and make his presence felt. He's not had a terrible start with Atlanta United, but it's not been a terrific start for Atlanta United at the same time. Kind of shrug your shoulders, kind of thing for Atlanta United. Mm. But yeah, this is really the time for him to show that, okay, I can take my game to the next level. I can really help this team, and I'm worth every penny that this club paid for me to bring me in.
Yeah, absolutely. Like this is you look at opportunities, and you saw Wiley last year. His opportunity was because of injuries, right? Immediately, and he gets to play more. And now Wiley's leaving. for a big opportunity, and now it's Etienne to get consistent play, and he's been playing more consistently, but he's going to have to be playing close to 90 minutes. Like, you don't really have that much. Now Machop will likely be going back into his sub routine here, hopefully, if you're getting healthy this week. But still, you want to see Etienne come in and be able to play most of the game and create chances and finish, because he had multiple opportunities last week to score. And, one, he had a really nice opportunity to get a nice shot on goal, and it was just soft. It was an easy save. So I think this is we talk about opportunities all the time, especially for the young players. Now it's for a veteran to be able to come in, take this job back, and then make it hard for Wiley to get back into the lineup. And I think that's what really makes things important here, because Wiley made it impossible for Etienne really to get in, even when he got healthy, because Etienne was hurt. Then he was healthy, but he couldn't see playing time because Wiley and Gutman were just so good on that left side. That was like the strongest part of our offense, was those two. And now you hopefully see Gutman and Etienne get some cohesion during this time and hopefully build on from there, because this team needs to score goals, and it can't just be Giakoumakis returning, and it can't just be Almada scoring bangers, right? Like, you're going to need goals from the wings, and that is what we're really need to focus on here before the summer, to figure out what our weaknesses are to be able to get better.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about that summer transfer window that's going to be so important for Atlanta United, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about that in the coming weeks and months. They'll be here before you know it. So we'll talk about that maybe a little more later on, but as we kind of turn the page and look forward to Atlanta United versus Charlotte FC coming up on Saturday, guys, we have an Emmy Award winner coming on for us tonight. But he'll be in the building at the Benz with Mo Adu, familiar name, on Saturday, calling the Metro MLS Season Pass. Former Sounders play-by-play man on TV and radio, 7 years, 8 years with Fox Sports, calling Bundesliga, Champions League, and the list goes on. Keith Costigan joins us. Hey. Keith, how's it going?
What's up, guys?
Welcome.
How you guys doing? I should have got the Emmy out and had it with me.
Yeah, it's a show and tell.
Is it in the kitchen?
No, you know what? I have two, and they're both still in their boxes, and they're in the bottom of press. I haven't even got them out. I don't know why. Maybe in my house it's about being humble or something like that. But yeah, I open them. I open the box up every now and again when family visit. But beyond that, they don't get much play time.
I will say you have two more Emmys than the three of us combined. I'll say that much. So
Speak for yourself, Sydney.
Yeah. No, but Keith, thanks a lot for coming on. I know it's a busy time for you as you get ready to head to Atlanta. I mean, you've been here several times already, but thanks again for coming on with us. I want to kind of look back. Like I said, you've been on a few Atlanta matches with Mo here at Mercedes-Benz in Atlanta. So based on what you've seen from Atlanta United thus far, what are kind of your impressions of the team, Giakoumakis, and how Pineda is looking at? Person, you're familiar with Pineda from your time in Seattle, as well as Garth Lagerwey, of course, the president. Just your thoughts on Atlanta United early on.
Yeah, I think when Atlanta are at full strength, I think that's the biggest key is when everybody's on the field, you look at that squad and you say, well, they can beat anybody. Almada is one of the most creative players you could have in the league. Giakoumakis has already shown us that he can lead the line and be not just a goal scorer, but his work rate as well. We spoke with Gonzo, and Gonzo was like, that was one of the first things. He's like, just every aspect of the game that he does, like he's invested in it. He was talking about him saying, hey, should I go back for corners? Should I help here? So he's invested in being successful. But the issue is kind of like what we saw last week, which is when players aren't available. I still think this Atlanta United squad, from the 11 to the next 3 or 4, there's a big drop. And that can cost you in a championship year. Look, I just did Seattle. No Raul Ruidiaz, but they have Hebert. Jordan Morris can come across. So you think of that squad and you go, okay, that's a squad that can cope. And I just don't think Atlanta United can cope without the key players when they're out. And that would be, for me, the biggest concern moving on this season.
Yeah, and I'm gonna kind of again talk about your time with the Sounders. Of course, Pineda Gunzo from your time up there. Assistant for Brian Smetzer for several years before making the move over. Your interactions with him up there in the Pacific Northwest, did you kind of get the sense that someday he would be a coach in MLS at some point in time?
Well, it's funny. We go so far back. I was calling a game for Univision, and Gonzo was on the call. So me and Gonzo were like, it was bizarre. I've gone through the UEFA coaching licenses, so I got my UEFA A, and when I was in Seattle, Gonzo was going through that process as well. So we would have some conversations, and first of all, you can just tell he's a student of the game. Um, he's not I've never sat with Gonzo and think that he is trying to tell you everything or be the smartest guy in the room. He's a sponge. Like he's one to, hey, what did you think? What did you see here? And you can tell that he has clear ideas with that as well. I mean, Gonzo, I think Brian Smetzer will tell you was a key part of the success for the Sounders over the last few years when he was an assistant. Has an opinion, has a mindset, and I think you kind of saw glimpses of that last year, even with the discipline. Here's how I want to play. Josef Martinez doesn't really fit in. That's difficult, but we have to move on. And I think with that, you have somebody who has the abilities and the temperament to become a really top coach in this league. And again, I think even at the start of the season, you've seen improvements in the side. I think you've seen the side get better. But again, I go back to the minute one or two players is out, there's an alarm bell there. Giacomakis for me would be the biggest one. I just don't think Matchup Chol last week comes in and plays there. It's a big drop off. But I think sometimes you can get that mixed up when a team doesn't do well because of the lack of players versus how a coach does. I think Gonzo would share the blame like anybody when there's a result. But I do think with the proper squad, you have a coach that can help you guys compete for an MLS Cup again.
So to piggyback on that, because that's been a point of contention going back to last year. And last year it was easy, right? Because of the injuries. The injuries last year for Atlanta were historic. Actually, it was kind of ridiculous. You look at this year; they got off to a very strong start, and people are starting to go back to this is all on the coach. This is all the coach's fault. But I think the other side of the argument is, well, we know the players have the talent to execute what he's trying to do, and they're not doing it. So where would the blame then be, do you think? Knowing Pineda as you do you realistically think that you can put a lot of the blame on him, or is it going to be mostly on the players not executing?
I think sometimes you have an idea and you have your starting 11 and they can implement the ideas, and some of the other players maybe less so. I would look. I mean, if I'm going to give it an overhaul look of Atlanta United this year, I would look at Luis Araujo and say, this guy should be getting more goals. He should have more goal involvements. Like, this is a big name player. I look at Derek Etienne, who comes across as a key signing, and I haven't been blown away with Derek when I watched him play, like in terms of his play in the final third. So, I mean, look, every coach's job is to get the best out of the players. So I'm sure Gonzo will say, hey, yeah, that's part of my job. But I looked at those two in particular, and you guys were mentioning before I came on air, like about Giacomakis scoring or Almada scoring bangers, and then beyond that, where the goals coming. Well, there's two sources that should be adding goals. And when I watched the game, I don't think Derek Etienne is not being put in a position to be successful. I just don't think he's playing well. Luis Araujo, I think he's had multiple opportunities in the final third, and he doesn't pull the trigger, or he takes too long when he needs to be a little bit quicker. So I don't like portioning the blame out, but I would say if you're looking at it and you're evaluating the squad, you'd say those players need to step up, whether that be, Gonzo finding a way to help that happen. Sure. But I would say the players themselves will put a lot on them, of ownership on themselves to be better in those areas.
Yeah, and that's the argument. That's kind of the catch-22 that we're in, right? I think it's fair, especially talking about Araujo, because he's a topic on this show every week, right? Araujo is getting paid. He's one of the highest paid players in the league, and then you look at the numbers, and it's just not there. Going the other side of the field, and I kind of wanted to touch on a little bit of your expertise in the past, but you called the Bundesliga for a long time. And Miles Robinson is a player that we had Taylor Twellman on last week, and he was talking about some of the scouts that he had heard from Bundesliga talking about how Miles Robinson was kind of on their radar. Would Miles be, just in kind of your opinion, a player that would fit well in Bundesliga? Do you think that'd be the best like European fit for him?
Yeah. Look, I'm a big fan of Miles. I think the fact that he comes back in this year, you automatically see how good you are defensively. The Columbus game, he's not there. The rest he is.
Yeah.
There's the body of evidence you need. I think there's going to be a lot of interest in Miles. I think Bundesliga clubs will be interested. I think some Premier League clubs will be interested as well. He's got a really good profile, covers ground well, reads the game well, and is just a good 1v1 defender. The fact that he's going to be, potentially available in the manner that he is makes it even more enticing for clubs. But I mean, look, you look at Austin Trusty, who went across, I think in MLS, had done okay, but he goes across to Europe. He's been named the Player of the Year at Birmingham in the Championship. I would have Miles as a much better defender than Austin. So, I think Miles could go across and be a key figure for a Bundesliga team, for a Premier League team as well. I'm with Atlanta United guys. I know you guys want him to stay, but I think it is going to be exciting to see where he lands. And I think whatever happens, he's going to be successful where he goes.
Yeah, and I mean that's the hard part, right? I think it's the manner in which he's probably going to go, because you know how much he's worth, right?
Yeah,
and then it's just kind of like it's so painful to just see him just go on a free, which is probably what's going to happen. You don't blame him at all. Like if you're in Miles' shoes, that's what you do. But he's at the age where I think where, to your point, like he's prime and ready to go. Like the Achilles was the biggest variable, and he came back from that, I think, stronger than he was before. So, it's a painful topic a little bit for the Atlanta United fans, but for sure. So away from the hypotheticals, though, this weekend, got to talk about the game. What, I guess, would be your two keys to either team to pull out a win?
Yeah, I think I'm interested to see. I think I've watched Charlotte a couple of times over the last few weeks, and they're quite good when they don't have the ball, which may sound weird. Like they're, the Columbus game, they didn't have much of the ball, but when they had it, they had more shots on goal than Columbus. So they're not afraid to be a really good transition team, be quite direct. I think Atlanta are going to have more possession this weekend. I think that's clear from me. It's what you can generate with that possession. Can you generate the goal scoring chances? That's one. It sounds like an easy thing, but it's a big thing. But the second part is, when out of possession, how do you stop the transition moments? And I think that's where Charlotte have done well. They had a win last weekend. They haven't been that good away from home, which I guess is one thing. But those would be the two keys for me. It's like you're dominating the game. You have more of the ball. You can almost get a false sense of we're in control when the opposition are saying, well, you haven't even got a shot on goal. I think the Columbus Crew, I think it was like 65% or something like that. And they had 2 shots on goal, and Charlotte had 35 and they had 6 shots. It was some skewed numbers like that. I may be off on the numbers, but I could see that kind of game developing if you're on Charlotte's side. The key for Atlanta is making sure they don't generate anything in those transition moments, and you make that possession a possession with a purpose, and really get chances yourselves in front of goal.
I'm afraid of Giakoumakis if he does play. We're not sure if he's going to be able to play 90 minutes. If he returns, Pineda has seemed to be very careful with players coming back from injury, obviously because of everything that happened last year. But if he's only able to play, say, 60 minutes and the game is still tied, that's when we lose confidence, I think, in this team, because we were talking about it on our ratings episode earlier this week. There haven't been many strikers for Atlanta United besides Giakoumakis and Josef Martinez that has scored. And I think that's the worry, is can you get a goal in early, get the lead before possibly he has to get out of the game?
No, it's weird. And it's a really good point the way you put it. It's like, on one hand, you're like, yes, we have this great striker who scores goals and when he's available. And then it's like, okay, what happens when he doesn't score? And again, I'll go back to what we said at the very start. I'm looking at, if I'm Gonzalo Pineda, if I'm an Atlanta United fan, I'm saying, Derek Etienne, you have to start delivering. You have to be amongst the goals. He should be, for me, Derek Etienne should be an 8 to 12 goal player in MLS in a season. I think Luis Araujo should be a 10 to 12 goals, 8 to 10 assists kind of player in terms of what his compensation is and what the expectations are with that. That's the concern for me as well with Atlanta. Who is going to step up? Even things like set piece goals. Can you generate more from those situations? And it is, I would imagine if it continues like this and Giakoumakis scores goals, and when he's not there, Atlanta lose, there'll be a lot of locker room talk elsewhere where you go, well, we'll just stop him and we'll get a result. And you don't want to become that team. So we're still early in the season. We're still in that, first third of the season where I think you're feeling each other out. But I think now is starting to be the time where you're saying to those other attacking players, you have to deliver. You have to deliver. So it'll be interesting to see if that happens this weekend.
So, this is obviously a derby. Charlotte, 3.5 hours away, even shorter on a flight. So I imagine that there will be a lot of Charlotte FC fans in the building, as there were a lot of Atlanta United fans up at Bank of America right up 85 a few weeks ago. You've called the Cascadia Derby numerous times, and that's kind of in a class of its own. El Trafico kind of in a class of its own. Then you have Atlanta United, you have Nashville, you have, before that, Orlando, and we were talking a few weeks ago how Orlando kind of seems manufactured from a derby standpoint. But then you have Nashville, which is kind of strengthened. You have maybe Miami to a lesser extent. Then you have Charlotte, which is still kind of a near club in the league, still kind of finding their legs, still trying to capture the moment here in MLS. From a rivalry standpoint, from a derby standpoint, how far do you think that an Atlanta-Charlotte derby could go in MLS? And do you think that eventually it could become maybe not the premier derby in MLS, because I already mentioned Cascadia and El Trafico, but kind of one of those that, because of appointment viewing, do you feel that's maybe sooner rather than later, or do you feel that there's still time that needs to happen before that becomes a reality?
Yeah, I think we look at what are the key elements of a rivalry, right? Which for me, I always look to the first thing, which is the fans. If the fans are bought in, if there's two good fan bases who genuinely hate to see each other do well, you're on the road to being a successful rival. And I think you have that here. It's a little bit different in this country because you mentioned 3.5 hour flight. You're not likely to leave your house and walk into a Charlotte FC fan and go, oh, God, I don't want to see this guy if we lose a game or whatever. But the fact that Charlotte will have fans in attendance, that you guys will send fans to Charlotte when you play there, and that for me develops the rivalry. And I think with you guys are like the bigger team in this rivalry now because you came into the league first. You have an MLS Cup, and whether you like it or not, they're gunning for you. Charlotte are like, we want to beat them. We want to take them down a peg or two. So, you can say, Atlanta fans can say, no, we don't consider them a rival. Okay, well, you better, because those teams are the ones that keep gunning for you. You have to take on those competitors as well. So for me, I spoke with Mo about it. We're excited about the fact that, Charlotte have come in and they've kind of zeroed in on Atlanta as that's one of the teams we don't like. We want to beat them. And it makes exciting for an exciting narrative for us in the booth, because first thing when we get up there, you'd be like, oh man, there's the Charlotte fans. Like, how's that interaction? And there's two things as a fan I love. I love hearing the sound of my own fans when we win and score. I love the silence of the opposition fans as well. And when you look across and you can have the little wave, enjoy the flight home, that kind of thing. All in good fun, of course. But I think that's going to generate a really, really good rivalry. Two good fan bases, two incredible stadium game day atmospheres. I'm excited to be there, and I'm excited to watch this rivalry develop as well.
Yeah, from a regional standpoint, I already mentioned Nashville, Miami, Orlando, Charlotte, Atlanta. it's amazing to see how the sport has grown here in the Southeast. I mean, the Atlanta Chiefs are a huge part, of course, of Atlanta soccer history. Silverbacks. So that seed that's already been planted here in Atlanta has just exploded here the past few years. But now you see it spread. I mean, again, Nashville, Charlotte, Orlando, Miami. It's just amazing development of the game. I mean, it's always been there, but just the growth of the game has been terrific. And look at Miami. If they sign Messi, if they sign Busquets or whoever,
he'll be everybody's rival if they
exactly.
sign Messi. Yeah,
exactly. But yeah, just it's amazing to see. I mean, granted, I'm not from here. Tyler is from here. Tommy is from out of state, but it's amazing to see just the growth of the sport here in the Southeast, and just the best is yet to come, I feel, in this region at least.
Yeah, I mean, my first state when I came to America was Georgia. So I arrived in Georgia, and I always tell this joke. There's like, I couldn't believe how big baseball was in Georgia. Like the news would be like, World War III is about to begin, but let's first hear from Chipper Jones, who went 2 for 3 today. Yep. And I'm like, these guys absolutely love their sports. Like they love, I think I was there when the Falcons made a run. I don't know whether they lost in the conference final or they made the Super Bowl, the Dirty Birds and all that. Like it was, I love being in Georgia. And I always wondered, like, I remember the Silverbacks and I was like, man, I wonder what an MLS team would be like. And I'll be honest, when it started, I was like, I hope it goes well. But the way Atlanta captured everything in the city, they didn't cater. They catered to everybody because Atlanta is just an incredible city. Like it's just the mix of people. It's a young, like for me, it's just it just has an incredible vibe to be in. So, when I go there now and I hear, Atlanta United playing this week, and I think back to when I first got there and I hear Chipper and Andrew Jones and Greg, like, it's cool. It's cool. Atlanta are on the map. I would say Southeast soccer is on the map in large part to the way Atlanta came in and kind of just took control. They said, we're going to make a mark from day one. They have. They're still making a mark. And, what you guys do, shows like this matter because they play a massive part in the push and the culture of our sport. So it's incredible to see, and long may it continue.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always good to hear, right? So I got a kind of off the cuff question. Has Mo given you any really good places to go eat since you're partnering with him and you're going to be here?
So a couple of things with Mo and myself, right? Mo, I love independent coffee places. Mo likes very traditional coffee. I mean, I don't want to give any coffee place a plug, but so Mo.
I mean, you were up in Seattle for a little bit. Yeah. You were up in Seattle for a little bit, so I think about a big coffee chain up there.
I live in LA. I drive 30 minutes to get my coffee because there's this guy that owns this place. I like giving him business. And by the way, it's really good coffee. So we argue about this all the time. And then the other thing we argue about is, where do you want to eat? We'll send each other recommendations. And he'd be like, make a choice. I'm like, whatever you want. And he'd be like, this guy. Like, so we go back and forth over that. I found out you guys have a Nobu, right?
I believe so. I want to say yes, but I don't want to steer you wrong.
Yeah, so I've only ever been to the one in LA once. I don't live that far from it. Sure. I'm like, I kind of want to see what Nobu in Atlanta would be like. Like, I do want to see that. But we definitely have arguments. I would say Mo ends up having to take the lead in terms of booking a place. I'll tell you this, in Houston, he said, I got a place. We get to it, and it was basically a nightclub with a table for us to eat. Like, this music was like, and I'm going, maybe that explains about Mo. Like, he's still got that in him. But the food was good, but I couldn't hear a thing that anybody said. But yeah, we get along well. I enjoy being in the booth with him because, joking aside, he's one of the best in terms of being a student of the game. But we'll definitely fight about where we're going to eat after the game. That's for sure.
I'm sure you've been to the varsity, right? I mean, you've lived in Georgia for a little bit. I'm sure you've been to the varsity downtown Atlanta. Not yet? Okay. Well, you got to get Mo to take you there, or you got to take Mo there at some point. Enjoy it together. I'm sure he's at it, but
Okay, I'm done. That's in this weekend for sure.
There you
Don't
go.
go before you call the game, or you will not make it to the game. I'm just letting you know. 100%. Don't do it. Do it after.
Okay, done.
It's worth it.
Yeah.
But you need some time after. I'm
Okay,
just-
so the
Absolutely.
varsity Saturday night, I'm there.
there you go.
There you go. Hey, Keith, we really appreciate your time. Looking forward to the match on Saturday. I know you and Mo will have a great time in the booth, and always welcome back anytime. Appreciate you.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you. Enjoy the game this weekend.
So if I see you at the Benz this weekend, because I'll be up in the press box too. If I see you, there's a name that is escaping me right now, and it's a Seattle-based coffee company that has multiple locations in Atlanta.
If you have coffee locations, hit me.
I'll bring it. If I see you, I'll let
We
you
gotta
know.
educate Mo. We gotta educate Mo.
Yeah,
There you go.
get them on the right page.
Have a good one, guys.
All right.
Appreciate
Cheers, Keith. Thank you.
See ya.
Awesome. So Keith Costigan will be calling the match with Mo Adu on MLS Season Pass on Saturday. And I think, Tyler, I know that coffee place you're talking about. It has that very familiar green logo, doesn't it? It's based in
literal-
Seattle.
No, not that one. I'm not talking about that one. There's
The other one.
A good. I don't want to say that one you're talking about is not good, but it's like it's a smaller. Like they only have areas in Atlanta and I think Seattle. And I mean, Jason's coming on a minute. He may know what I'm talking about because he knows everything about Atlanta too. But it's on the tip of my tongue, and I'm gonna find it before the end of the show. But yeah, it's not the one you're thinking of. I promise.
Okay.
Why are we talking about it like it's Beetlejuice?
Say it 3 times, it's gonna pop up in my hand, and I have to represent.
Well, it's because your
Coca-Cola.
app knows. Like, do you notice like your phone? If you drive by like a Chipotle or I'll say it, come on, Starbucks. You walk by, all of a sudden your phone will be like, "Would you like to order your previous drink that you ordered last?" Like, if we talk about it, all our phones are going to go off and say, "Ask if we want a latte."
So now everybody is going to have whatever Facebook.
Oh man, human beings.
Exactly.
I've never
It's
heard
not.
of it.
Now everybody's in the chat. It's not Seattle's.
Caribou Pete, Seattle's
Not
best.
Caribou. Look, y'all
All
carry
these.
it on for a second. I'm going to find it,
All right.
and then I will let y'all know.
While you do that, Jason Longshore, what is your favorite coffee place in Atlanta?
Man, you're asking the wrong person. I drink a lot of Red Bull, not coffee.
So you're the Red Bull guy.
I'm trying to do more coffee, to be honest. Usually, like cold brew stuff. I like cafe con leche, so I'll go in that direction. If I had to go have coffee somewhere in Atlanta, it's going to be Buena Gente over in Decatur, Cuban style. Their cafe con leche is very good.
Okay.
I'm on board with
Dancing
that.
Goats is another one that's a good kind of chain-ish kind of thing, but not.
Say that again.
Dancing Goats, is that the one you were trying to think
I
of?
actually think that is the one I'm thinking of.
That's what I was thinking, possibly. I didn't know how chainy it was.
I know they have a few in Seattle, and then they have like a couple here.
Yeah, I didn't know they had any in Seattle. They've got the one over by Pont City Market. That's a good little location. I like that spot. And then a really good one over in Decatur as well.
Yeah, okay, so it's Atlanta, Georgia, Olympia, and Tacoma, Washington, and St. Petersburg, Florida. So
That might be the one.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is the one.
Well, there you go. Problem solved.
There we go. Thank you.
Tommy, when you're back, when you're down here, Tommy, you gotta take notes, man. We'll get you to a nice coffee place.
I managed a coffee shop all through college, so that's why I don't drink coffee anymore. I was a Monster guy for 3 years, but 1 month yesterday without a Monster. It's a very proud time for me.
There you go.
Nice. Good for you.
There you go. Congrats.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jason, how's it going? Welcome back. Great to have you back. Always good to have you on.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, how things been going with you, I guess?
Busy. I had the Georgia State High School playoffs last week. Feels like last year at this point. 8 games in 4 days, and then went to Fort Lauderdale, and we know how that went. And then did Georgia Storm and NPSL on Sunday. So it was a 10-game run from Tuesday through Sunday, and I'm almost recovered.
There you go.
You got a big week coming up. Sunday, Wednesday, Sunday, right?
Man, it doesn't stop. It's Saturday this week, then Tuesday on Sunday, then Wednesday, then next week. I know we've got Saturday, and I can't remember when the twos play next week. I think I've got that too. So It's always going.
Nonstop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man.
Nonstop. It's that time of year.
It's every time of year, Tyler. What are you talking about?
That's true. That's true. So I got a quick question for you, just
Yeah.
because we can talk about Atlanta, but we have the Open Cup right now. What happened last night that you were just like, anything that kind of stood out to you? Any specific
Minnesota
matches?
Philly was exceedingly drunk.
Yeah.
Kai Wagner rescuing it in extra time or in stoppage time, sending it to extra time, rescuing it in extra time, sending it to penalties, and then not converting on his penalty. I mean, come
Wild.
on. Just awful. That game was crazy. So far today, not too much early on. Columbus is boat racing Loudoun United, which you would expect. I'm looking forward to Memphis and Birmingham.
Me too.
I mean, Memphis is 7 in a row without a loss, and obviously, I got to know Stephen Glass and his wife Carla really well during their time here in Atlanta. I've kept in touch with them, hoping for all the success in the world for Memphis and for Steven, because he deserves it. And I mean, we can go back to the Open Cup game here. They were up for it and they had to fight, and it took a little bit of a fortunate penalty late. Philip Goodrum found the penalty that they were struggling to find the breakthrough. There wasn't a whole lot in it. But that's it. And that was the breakthrough, and that's the magic of the cup, right?
That's why it's so fun.
Sometimes it's fun. I think in this
Yeah.
case, it's actually a good thing for Atlanta United, because with all these midweek games coming up and Yorgos not, all the way back yet, but it's looking good for this week so far. It's good to not have extra games. This season is just one with the compressed nature of the schedule. It's good to not have the extra games for this team. I think it'll serve them well in the long run.
Yeah.
We were talking with Taylor. Oh, sorry, Tyler. I was just saying we were talking with Taylor about the rosters just in general, right? And DPs and the future. And you see all these games getting added. You got the Summer Leagues Cup coming up. Do you see the rosters changing at some point in the next few years to give the teams better depth? Because we've dealt with this crazy compressed schedule, a few summers ago. And the quality of the midweek games were just bad. And now you're just adding all these games in. Are you concerned about that? And do you think they'll change it sooner than later?
Honestly, I'm not that worried about it this year. I think there is, you have more midweek league games right now than you're accustomed to, and you got to deal with that. But Leagues Cup, what it affects, like the actual Leagues Cup games, I think will be great. I think what it affects is like now, where there's more midweek games that are going to pile up. I do think rosters will change, but honestly, it's twofold. I mean, yeah, you can give more cap space and more senior roster spots and go sign guys, and you're going to be pulling from USL Championship. In some cases, you're going to be pulling from South American leagues. In some cases, European leagues, obviously. But the other side is it should be a push to develop your own players better. And that's the game changer to me. I mean, that's why Philly is able to do what they do. That's why teams that develop talent, it's what's going on here as well. I mean, from a shorter runway, you're really into the first generation of guys who have grown up in a professional environment. And that's the game changer, because that's what happens in other leagues. I mean, I think we have this idea in American soccer that, like no other league in the world has a compressed schedule. Yes, they do. Like, you got 2 cup competitions in England because they're savages. I mean, it's crazy. So, like in those competitions, what happens is the young guys who are coming through the academy, who get the games early on, they're the ones who get that opportunity to break through. And look, the Atlanta game, I think, is a prime example of that to a degree, where you didn't get the breakthrough that you needed. You needed better performances from some of the young players or players on the fringes of the first team roster that were getting an opportunity in a competitive match. You needed better performances in that game, and you didn't get them. And it's a learning lesson, and it's an opportunity to push forward. But I think you have to do both. Like, you need to increase the roster, if it's size, if it's cap money, whatever. You need to do both, and you need to do that sooner rather than later. And I think if Leagues Cup is successful, then you'll have the financial mechanism to say, look, we made this much money by doing this extra tournament. We're going to put it into the rosters and grow the talent base better. But you also still, And some clubs won't ever do it well. Some clubs will do it incredibly well because they won't go spend externally. But you have to continue to push to develop your own talent. That's the game changer for me, is when you've got more than just a handful of teams in this country who are developing professional talent at young ages. That's when the national team changes. That's when American soccer changes. When you get more Caleb Wileys, for example, that's when it really starts to change. This guy's getting professional games under his belt at 15. And at 18, he does not play like an 18-year-old. He plays like a grown man.
Yeah, so
I guess. Sorry, I was just going to jump in real quick and kind of. You're talking about Leagues Cup, Jason.
Yeah.
If MLS does well in Leagues Cup, I would argue, if MLS doesn't do well in Leagues Cup, I think we talked about this a few weeks ago. If MLS just gets its hat handed to it by Liga MX, would that be kind of the tipping off point for Garber to say, okay, we need to really look at things from a roster standpoint and get ourselves in a position where we're more competitive with the neighbors down south?
Yeah, it's both. I mean, what I was saying was Leagues Cup from a financial standpoint. When it's successful, I think then that's your mechanism to invest more because there's another bucket of money coming in. But yeah, you're right. Either way, I mean, I think if you do well in Leagues Cup, which I think MLS teams should, if it's a toss up between the top teams in both leagues, which is very, very likely, if MLS teams struggle, any of those you can justify spending more. But I think the biggest thing is going to be the growth of the business. And I go round and round about it because, I mean, look, I love this game at all levels, and I love the growth of it, and I'm a romantic about that side of it. But it is a business, and to do the things that I think people want to see MLS do in terms of spending more and allowing a bigger cap and more designated players or no designated players and just a unlimited cap or whatever, you got to make more money. I mean, that's what it comes down to, because, I mean, it's not my money they're spending. I don't get to judge that. So you got to make more money coming in. And Leagues Cup is a really interesting idea that I think will be successful in the long term. And I think it will be emulated by other leagues around the world. Belgium and the Netherlands should be the next one to do it. It would be a no-brainer for those two to grow their leagues and grow their business, because, I mean, where else are you going to grow the business? You're going to get sponsors. You're going to get more sponsors sometimes. TV is what it is, and you're in a great spot with Apple with a really good base to build off of there. Expansion has limits, I mean, there's going to be at least one more and probably three more coming in. And look, that might be $1.5 billion or more. But then that's gone.
Yep.
So you've got to find ways to grow the business. And I'd rather see them at a Leagues Cup than increase ticket prices. You know what I mean? So I think Leagues Cup is something that should be, first off, I think it'll be an awesome competition. I think it'll be a lot of fun. Second, it should be something that's celebrated, because if you want the league to grow, this is a prime way to do it, by creating a new bucket of revenue that can then be invested back into the league.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback on that, and going back to what you were talking about before, but the academies, the twos teams, Next Pro, how do you feel the league is sitting right now with some of the bigger, I guess, developmental clubs like Philly, Atlanta, Seattle, I guess Dallas probably included in that conversation for sure. You were playing in USL for a long time, relatively. Mm-hmm. Now you're dropping in Next Pro, dropping being maybe in quotes, but we were there the other day when Bocanegra talked about how the league impressed him, but it wasn't quite up to where he thought it would be.
It's different.
Yeah. What do you, I guess, what are your thoughts on how that's going to change the development in the next couple of years?
In the long run, it's going to be better. In the short term, it's different. I don't think it's worse. I don't think it's a drop down. It's different. I mean, I called all the twos games on ESPN Plus, and we're doing them now with soccer down here from a radio perspective. And what I love about Next Pro is it's a better level than I thought it would be, just straight out of the gate. It is a more diverse tactical league than USL Championship. I think USL Championship, you get a little more of teams playing similarly from place to place. And typically, which, look, is not all that abnormal for second divisions anywhere, pro rel or no pro rel. You're going to have players who aren't as technical. So tactically, you're going to have to be maybe a little more focused on pace and power and playing direct and size and strength and these kinds of things. And USL Championship gave young MLS players good tests in that. It was good for your Caleb Wileys to get those games in USL Championship going up against guys who were twice or more of his age, and were bigger and stronger and had more experience. But MLS Next Pro, it's been interesting to see how teams approach it, because there's been more of those 24 to 28-year-olds signed than I thought there would be. Again, the tactics, you're more often somewhat emulating what your first team is going to play. And MLS is a far more diverse league tactically than USL Championship. So it's been good. And it's been different each week. I mean, Orlando plays very differently than Philly, which played very differently than New England. So that's a good thing for the young players. And I think as you get another decade down the line, because, I mean, honestly, we're all like, toddlers in this at this point. When you get another decade down the line and you're producing better talented players, then the league is better. And when you get more 15 and 16-year-olds breaking through and not just playing or debuting, but starring, things will change. And I think one of the biggest things, going back to roster rules and stuff with MLS, because we're all over the place tonight, this is great. I think one of the biggest things that I would love to see MLS, US Soccer, USL needs to be involved in this as well, because their academies are starting to develop talent in good ways. And they need to sit down with the NCAA and say, look, if these guys do not sign professional contracts, they need to be allowed to play in MLS. Right now, you can play in USL. Why? Where's the line? Like, that's a dumb line to draw. They're not going to sign a pro deal. They're an academy player. They're on an amateur contract. They want to keep their eligibility to potentially play in college. If they don't get a pro deal at 18, they should be allowed to be called up. And if you want to put the 4 call up /2 game limitation on it, that's fine. I think that needs to expand. And I would expand it next year. I'd go more to like 6-3 or 8-4, to be honest, to allow those second teams to be true feeders. But the academy players who aren't on pro deals, you should be able to give them a nice test in an Open Cup game, in a midweek regular season game where you're a little banged up. That's what happens everywhere else in the world, and I think it would be a great addition. You just need to get the NCAA to make the separation from, okay, you can play in USL, which is second division, but you can't play in MLS. It should be, if you can play in one, you can play in both. And that's, I hope, changes.
So to kind of add on to that, in terms of like letting the young guys play, how do you feel about, thankfully Atlanta's not dealing with it. We talked about it a little bit before you got on, but I mean, they're letting Caleb Wiley go to the World Cup, which they should, but you have teams that aren't.
Yep.
I mean, I understand the whys and all that, but ultimately, don't you think it, I mean, you answer this, but I personally think it's better. Let them have the opportunity. If you can't handle it for a week, for 2 weeks, for a month without, one of your U20s, then you probably got bigger problems.
It depends. I mean, I think in a perfect world, yes. And I think I would always opt to letting them go. But, LA Galaxy, for example, let, I think, one player go and one player not, because they have an injury crisis in the back. So they needed to keep Jalen Neal. That's okay. Look, that happens sometimes.
Injuries, I get.
Yeah, and it's not an MLS thing either. And I think it's something that people have to understand. I think there's a certain subset of American soccer who, anytime they can point and yell at MLS, they take it. And this is not an MLS conversation. This is a soccer conversation. France, I think, had 28 call-ups denied for their U20s. And I mean, you're talking like second division teams who are fighting relegation said no. So like, it happens everywhere. Paxton Aronson wasn't allowed to come. And that's one. Look, I get it. He's factoring into their games. They've got some games coming up, some big games. I get it. In a perfect world, they would be able to go. In a perfect world, the tournament wouldn't be overlapping with important games. And that's something that I think FIFA needs to figure out on a long-term perspective. This year, from a calendar, it's a little different than it should be because of the World Cup being where it was and seasons running a little bit longer. because of that. So maybe this is a little bit more of a one-time thing. But I would like to see in the long term, if you're going to still do 2-year U17, U20 World Cups, do it in the summer window, either at preferably at the beginning of the summer window, where you can get guys to come in. If you do it late, you're going to get teams that want guys to come into their preseason. And for young players, that's incredibly important. So if you do it early, like if you look at the calendar essentially, and you might have a couple cup finals that overlap, if you do it really about this time in general, I think most years it's not going to be as big of an issue. MLS will always be an outlier. There's other leagues as well, Brazil, Argentina. I mean, Javier Mascherano wasn't able to get everybody he wanted from Argentina either. So there's always going to be an issue somewhere, but in a perfect world, you allow them to go. But I'm never going to say that anybody who doesn't allow their players to go is wrong, because I think it's a team by team and a player by player basis.
And it keeps USA Twitter away from Atlanta United posts. That's one of the most important things there.
Yeah. I love how Atlanta United ended up somehow getting thrown under the bus on this with not letting guys go. And again, it's every player in every situation is different. There's not a blanket statement you can make, and not every competition is the same either. Like a World Cup is a different conversation than a continental qualifying tournament where you should get through, for example, stuff like that.
For sure. Jason, we were talking about the form of the team, lately, and missing Giakoumakis, and it got us into a deeper conversation about missing Josef Martinez. Joseph goes down in 2020, and you're just trying to bring in guys, trying to at least fill the void, right? And I don't know if it's fair to say that they haven't done well, because it seems like a lot of these players have come in, Kubo, Adam John, name them all, and the service hasn't been there for a lot of these players. Like, I've wanted to blame the players, and I thought about it, and like, they haven't always had the opportunity. They haven't gotten the ball. And Giakoumakis comes in, and he's like an immediate impact, right? And like, we've seen Barry and we've seen Chol, and yes, they've gotten a few opportunities, but it seems like the striker disappears at times when it's not Josef Martinez, where it's not Giakoumakis. Is the style of the play change? Do they not have the confidence in him? Like, I feel like Miguel Barry should be better than what he is right now, and it doesn't seem like he's getting enough touches on the field.
Yeah, he's definitely not getting enough touches. That's for sure. He's very different than Giakoumakis, and it hasn't changed, in my opinion, the way that I thought it would. I thought as he got kind of embedded more into the system, he would make more runs off the ball, especially those in behind to stretch a team. And Barry's the kind of number 9 who wants to drop and combine and help play through, which is a very useful tactic. He's got good feet. He's got good touch. But with this team, I think that hurts more than it helps. I think they need that space. And I talked about it. I felt like all last year, where Joseph showed that he either, couldn't or wouldn't make those runs to stretch the team, that it folded in on itself. It was like an accordion that you squeeze in together, and there was nowhere to operate. Now, Thiago Almada's a wizard. He's going to go find spaces to operate in. But a lot of times, and I don't have a problem with him dropping, but I want him to find more dangerous spaces in the attacking half than have to drop to find any space to be able to get the team forward. So, you've got to get that part operating. I think Machop Chol is still a work in progress as a 9. I think he's figuring out those runs to make. And the big thing that you can't quantify here, I do think the service was okay. And I kind of thought back to that as well. I'll say this, that in 2020, if you have Josef Martinez, as opposed to not having him, and you got the exact same service that you got from Brooks Lennon in that season, Brooks Lennon has double-digit assists. And I think Brooks never getting the opportunity to play with prime Joseph, it's a shame for his assist numbers. I mean, Brooks is, I'll go ahead and make a hot take. I think Brooks Lennon might be the most underappreciated Atlanta United player ever. The guy's just a warrior. First off, he's greatly improved his 1v1 defending. And it's something that he's worked on. It's something Gonzalo Pineda told us it was a big focus for him and focus for the team this year. And he's had great performances 1v1. I can't think of a time that he's been beat 1v1 to cost you anything. Service has been great for him, and that's what he's known for. I think the biggest thing that's hard to quantify, and you said about the team playing differently, and I think it's a subconscious thing, because there's an attitude, there's a presence, there is that side of it that you're never going to be able to quantify numbers. And I think Yorgos and Prime Josef gave you that. You wanted to feed them because you believed they would score every time they touched the ball. With other forwards, maybe not. Maybe you feel like you have to have the perfect ball in. Maybe you don't just put a cross in and let him go up and get it. Yorgos, you're putting a cross in his vicinity, and you trust that he's going to go make something happen out of it more often than not. With others, maybe you don't. Maybe then you hold it. Maybe you try to rework it to get that better shot. And look, Atlanta's done a good job in terms of getting quality shots this year. And that was a big criticism last year. And this is one you can quantify to a degree. XG has its limitations, but your XG per shot, Atlanta United's a top 5 team in Major League Soccer. They're not shooting as much, but they're taking better shots, which was a big conversation coming into this year. So it's this weird thing. And I honestly, the game in Fort Lauderdale, it really hit me. And I talked about it on Atlanta Soccer Tonight this week. It hit me with Andrew Gutman going forward, which is going to sound really strange. But Gutman has a presence on the field. And again, this isn't something you can quantify with numbers. Gutman will make things happen. He's got that it factor. He'll put his head down and he'll charge into the 18. And does it always look smooth like it's Luis Araujo dribbling forward? No. But does Gutman make things happen and unbalance an opponent? Yeah. And he started to do that. I think the first 30 minutes, Atlanta had 3 shots. They had a great opportunity for Machop Chol that he didn't convert on a header from about 8 yards out. But after that, it kind of stagnated a little bit because Miami was being comfortable and careful. And Gutman started to force it a little bit. And this team's good enough at winning the ball back with their counter pressure that I think you can afford to do that. With a Giakoumakis, he's always forcing the play. And not with the ball, but with his movement, with his mannerisms, with his presence. Josef obviously did that. We know how he did that at his best. So it's a little bit of X's and O's in terms of the movement. It's a little bit of attitude, which is hard to quantify. But this is something that teams suffer with. And this is an MLS thing for sure because of the cap and your limitations. Kansas City last year without Alan Pulido is another prime example. If you lose that number 9 that you expect to carry you, nobody, maybe outside of the Galaxy, who have 2 that they can't figure out what to do with at times, nobody has a second number 9 that has the same presence as your starter. And it's just such a hard element. Chemistry is a weird thing. And I think when you have Yorgos Giakoumakis in this team, the chemistry all makes sense. And when you don't have that alpha dog that I think is in the team that carries that presence and demands the ball and makes you play it to him.
So who do you go get? And the reason I asked that is because we had Mike on here a couple of weeks ago, and we asked him kind of, when the summer window gets here, what are you looking to do? If you were playing Boca Negra for a day,
okay,
what do you do? And he said, I would definitely look at backup striker position.
He said backup striker. If everybody's healthy, I'm assuming is a
yes, yeah.
And you're not going to lose anybody,
right?
Everybody stays. This roster stays together.
It's just as it is now. It would take away the injuries, but you need depth. I guess we're talking about depth specifically. The backup striker position, you've got Giakoumakis, barring the hamstring.
Well,
Barry is kind of up in the air.
I got to be realistic in that I probably don't have a lot of cap space to work with. So, we can play that hypothetical game all day, but this team was pretty good when they were fully healthy at the beginning. And that was as Yorgos Giakoumakis was getting embedded into it. I'm not forcing anything. If I have everybody sticking around, if I have everybody healthy, if I don't have any long-term injury issues, I'm not forcing anything. If I can get a number 9 that again, like you're not going to get that. You're not going to get a number 9 that has the same presence. I don't think you will. The only one, and it's interesting, he was on the roster last year. He has a presence for sure. Dom Dwyer, and he's available. And he was at a Braves game last night.
Yes, he was.
I mean, like if that's something that is lacking, then that's one way to solve it. And when you get into realistic additions, that's one, because it appears, and this is from the MLS website we were looking at today on Stoppage Time, I think you've got a supplemental roster spot to work with. I think you can make that happen. And that's really about the only kind of move you're looking at is a supplemental roster spot. So like, I think sometimes criticism of front offices in MLS is not done fairly because of the limitations of roster and cap and acquisitions and all these kinds of things. And I think Atlanta, as it was built to start the season, really good. And if everybody's healthy, I'm not forcing anything just to shake it up. And if, obviously the one is if you're going to lose Thiago, then you've got to figure out what happens there. But that's out of your hands to a degree.
Right. If you were, frame it kind of the same way I did with Mike, but if you were Bocanegra, and we're talking about Dom Dwyer, if he could come back, if he wanted to come back, would there be any reason to not bring him back?
Not that I'm aware of. No, not that I'm aware of. You then are going to have to think about, okay, that's going to cut into Chol's time developing. Do you see Chol as somebody who can turn into a kind of a utility attacking player who can play as a 9, play as a winger, maybe even plays a 10 a little bit? Because that's going to take time away from him. You have to weigh those things. I never heard anything bad about Dwyer in the locker room. Never heard anything about him being an issue. He's a big personality, but I think he blended into the team really well last year. I liked what he brought to the team. That personality and attitude, I think, was a good thing with that group last year. I think it might be an even better thing with the group now. You do have to weigh, okay, how old he is at this point and his injury history, and can you get another year out of him for the money that would require to put him on the roster? And that's one that I don't know his injury history in front of me and kind of how they felt about it last year, but I think it was okay. It's worth a shot. I don't have an issue with it. But I also don't think it is a dramatic need, again, because you're never going to get the number 9 that you want that is the direct replacement like for a Yorgos Giacomakis. So you have to accept that it's going to be different. I'd be fine with Dom Dwyer being that guy.
So when you take a look at this team over the last 3 matches against Memphis, we talked about Memphis a little bit, against Nashville when, I don't want to say they got played off the pitch, but still Nashville.
No, they did not get played off the pitch.
Yeah.
I will thoroughly disagree with that.
Well, no, I'm not saying they did, but I will say Nashville, were the better team at that day, I think. Not played off the pitch. That's not what I'm saying. But yeah, and Miami, just 3 losses in a row. And again, I feel like you talked about it just a little bit earlier, but is it an attitudinal thing with this team? I mean, we talked about the roster, we talked about the players. I mean, Gutman, I agree with you, is he had the presence, a strong presence against Miami. But we mentioned the service, and I feel like anytime this team tries to get service for their players up front, outside of Giacomakis, nothing happens. I mean, is it just an attitudinal thing, a motivational thing? I mean, what's going on? I mean, roster aside, what needs to happen for this team to play to a level that is acceptable and can get themselves, more points?
I think it's a location thing as much as anything. They were on the road, and it's something that I mean, it's easy to dismiss, but I ran the numbers. They're right there. The Eastern Conference, there's only 16 road wins from every Eastern Conference team combined. That's it. The average points per game for Eastern Conference teams on the road is 0.89. Atlanta United's is 0.83. Can they be better? Yeah, you win that game in Toronto, then we're having a very different conversation, I think, about the road form. but you're not expected to win games on the road in this league. There's very few teams who are doing it. It's early, and this year, for some reason, it feels like it's even more exaggerated with home and away. And again, we're about a third of the way through the season. We'll see how it shakes out as the whole year goes on. But that's a factor in it. The Memphis game, I pushed to the side to a degree because it's the Cup. We saw craziness in it last night. Nobody saw Pittsburgh going to New England and beating the Revolution, who are having one of the best starts to an MLS season since 2005. And they got beat at home by Pittsburgh.
Good for Robbie Mertz, by the way.
Good for Bob Lilly, too. Bob Lilly might
sure.
be a little crazy. He might still be yelling at people in Foxborough as we speak, but he's a very, very good manager. Cup's the Cup. It's a little different. When you rotate like Atlanta, I think had to in that game to a degree. Guys have to step up. And some players who are fighting for playing time didn't make a big enough case that they need more playing time out of the Memphis game. Nashville, you can't fall behind Nashville, number one. You want to get into that game. You can't fall behind them because they are too good defensively and too comfortable defensively. That's how they play. It's based off getting the first goal, whether it's a set piece, whether it's a long throw, whether it's a counter, and then playing even more on the counter. They are a better team with a lead than they are at 0-0. And when they get that goal off the set piece, it's going to be a tough day. Hani Mukhtar in transition is on another planet. You can't fall behind. You did. You had an opportunity at the top of the 18 with Gutman actually charging in that at 2-1. You get a goal there. It's 2-2. And instead, it goes the other way. They get the third one. I think that game was far more even, and the numbers bear that out. You do have to remember game state, and I think the Miami game's a prime example of game state where, Miami didn't have to push very much after they got their 2 goals on 2 shots in the second half, and Atlanta did, and they created a ton of chances. I mean, the key pass numbers are huge. Araujo created 5 chances off the bench late, but you were also chasing the game, and Miami was sitting deeper and allowing some of those chances to maybe be created under a little bit less pressure to defend from a deeper spot. So numbers are numbers, and you got to take them with a grain of salt. But I think more than anything, this team's got to get back home and win the games at home that they're expected to win. And that's what you have in these next 2. And if you don't, then I think some of the conversations can be had. If you get 4 points out of these, okay, that's enough, but not good enough. You want more. Kind of back to that Toronto game where a point is good enough, but you wanted more, and you should have gotten more because it was right there in your back pocket, and you allowed it to fall out of your pocket. So you got to get home, and you got to win these games at home. And you got to get Yorgos healthy. I mean, look, I don't, I talked about it on stoppage time today. I don't subscribe to plus minus very much when it comes to stats in soccer. But man, it's pretty dramatic when you look at it with Yorgos and you look at what the team has produced and how the team is defended with Yorgos. I mean, they've only conceded 2 goals with him on the pitch. And a lot of that's because of that press that he leads. He's relentless. You got to get him back in this team. And when he is in this team, are there any complaints about the way that they've played? I don't think there are.
Nope.
If there are, I think it's nitpicking. I think when he's in the team, this team looks like an MLS Cup contender. When he's not, they don't. And I think you could probably say that for a lot of teams in this league if you're missing your top goal scorer.
Yeah, and we've talked about if you're playing FIFA and you turn injuries off, nobody could get hurt. This team could win MLS Cup easy.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I mean, you would. It's one of the best rosters out there, and it's just once you find adversity here, it's just that's where it seems to be hard to watch at times. And
it can be. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a hope, is that they can be healthy at the right time. And that's with any playoffs. If you're in the NFL, the NHL, you got to be healthy at the right time to win a championship.
At the right time too. There's an element of that as well. Houston used to be the kings of that. Dominic Kinnear, I don't think he cared about the supporter shield, the regular season, whatever. First half of the season was whatever it was. And then they would gear up starting in the summer. And they would peak going into the last weeks of the regular season and in the playoff run. They were elite at that. And there is an element to that. This team shouldn't be playing its best soccer right now. If they are, they're not going to win MLS Cup and they're not going to go very far in the playoffs. They've got to continue to build, and you've got to see that build. And right now, the build got slowed down when you lost Giacomakis for a couple weeks.
For sure. And like I listened to your show today, and like you guys were saying, like it's either all roses or it's burn it all down. And like that's kind of how the fan base is. And I was laughing while I was listening to that, because it's true. Like if you're on Twitter and I hear you guys on your post game reading some tweets out, it's entertaining to read on a week to week basis on where it's at. And the fan base really looks for somebody to blame. And you see the Pineda out tweets nonstop, the Boca out tweets, and the player that seems to get the biggest out tweets is Aruju. And we've talked to Taylor Twellman about him, and we talked earlier with Keith about it. How do you get him going? Because I think maybe if he wasn't, a DP, like the DPs are always going to be scrutinized more. They make this much money. It's constantly thrown out. Even, when you're listening to them on Apple TV, they show the transfer fee. They show the salary. And for the fans, and not Scarves and Spike out, Jimothy, I see your tweet. We're not going to leave. But like, I think that's like one of the biggest things is like Aruju, he comes into this team and he's one of the hottest players, right? Like he's showing that people are shocked. He's just stealing the ball from the keeper, little tap in there. And then he comes in the next season and has a few moments, and he comes in this preseason, looks fantastic, right? Like he's scoring goals. He seems like he's got confidence, and he's been quiet until really he came in and the sub performance, which when he came in to the league, he was like super sub of the year or sub of the year. Like that was like his thing. He was the sub and he was great coming in. But it seems like as a starter, he doesn't provide enough on that side.
I think the start of the season was good for him. I think when this team was at full strength, when you go back, and I was actually just pulling it up to make sure I wasn't too crazy. He had 2 goals in the first 4. I don't know where I'm looking at. I can't pull up the assists easily, but I think all of his assists were in the first 4 or 5 games as well, when the team was playing its best. And I was having this conversation with somebody this week, and Araujo is never going to be looked at in this way because of that transfer fee. And because of his talent. I mean, he's an incredibly talented player. Nobody can deny that. It just doesn't seem to always fit for him. But he reminds me a little bit of a Scottie Pippen kind of player, in that he is. Do you want him to be your number 1 option? Maybe not. Do you want him to be, in this case, your 3rd option? Yeah, kind of like that. And I think he's good in that role. I think when he is there with Giacomakis and with Almada, maybe take some of the pressure off. Maybe he's able to play a little more freely. Maybe he's not pressing. I feel like he's a hot and cold kind of player in the attack. The thing about him that I always bring up, because I'm always impressed by it, is his defensive work. He always works hard defensively. When he's having an awful day on the dribble, when he's just not able to make anything happen, when he turns the ball over, he often wins it back because he doesn't stop working for the team. And that is why he keeps getting opportunities. And that's, I think, why, you want it to break out for him, but it hasn't. I wish I knew what it was exactly that was the issue. I don't know if he's putting too much pressure on himself. I don't think it's a confidence issue, but, it's hard to say. I don't know if it's just the game doesn't slow down enough for him in the final third. I don't know. And I wish I did, because I think he's maybe on just pure flat out talent. He's a top 5, definitely a top 10 player in this league, but the production hasn't been there. Last year, maybe it's different if he doesn't pull the hamstring in game 1 after scoring that first goal, and maybe he's able to build some momentum and do it. But, I'll always remember 2022. One of the lasting memories will be late in the season where you needed wins to get into the postseason. It felt like every game Luis Araujo had a big opportunity to score early in the first 15, 20 minutes, and 4 or 5 weeks in a row, either saved or shot wasn't on target. And, some of these were good saves too. I mean, that's the thing. That's what'll also drive you nuts. It's not hitting the back of the net. It's not happening. And I don't know how to change that for him. And it needs to change, because if he is what I think his talent is, alongside Almada, alongside Giacomakis, then forget it. This attack you're not going to be able to contain. But he hasn't been. And get Yorgos back, maybe it'll click a little bit more like it did earlier. And if he can be the third of the three amigos in the attack, then maybe that's a little more comfortable spot. And maybe he can start to build a little bit for a good run in the second half. But he's got to produce more. I mean, there's just no way around it. You brought him in to produce more, and he's not producing as much as I think he's capable of. And I don't think there's an easy reason why. It's not from a lack of work, in my opinion.
Yeah, he's always in, especially like you said, at the end of last year. Like I remember that Portland game, he had multiple chances. Like he was in the perfect position to score, and it just wasn't going in. And that's what we've talked about is like the confidence. Can we get him confidence? We were joking around, like start him in the Open Cup. Let him get a couple goals in there. Like let him get that confidence back up because he is very streaky. And I just wonder how long the club waits for this to see, like, is this a consistent player that's going to be able to score for us, or do we have to move on from him?
Well, you got to look. I mean, you have to always explore options because you're always thinking to move ahead. I mean, trust me, the front office and the scouting department and everybody involved is thinking about how they would replace him, how they would replace Giacomakis, how they would replace Almada, how they'd replace anybody, because you have to. And you can't wait to build that list until the player's gone. So you're going to be thinking ahead. And then the flip side is, there was a lot of noise that didn't necessarily come from your top tier sources out of Brazil, but there was a lot of noise about teams being interested in bringing him back to Brazil in the off season. Does that pop back up in the summer window? Who knows? And if everything makes sense, then you move on and you move forward. If he can get going again, then you're probably not going to want to move on. But I think you're already thinking like, all right, if the right deal comes up for him, then this is what we would do in response.
Yeah, and I think that's something too that probably should be cleared up. And I'm not saying like our platform is the way to do that. I like to think it is. But I mean,
you guys have reach. Don't
we try. We try.
Reach.
But like everybody's talking about Almada, right? That's the big thing. When Almada leaves, the team's going to be crap. That's what we always hear.
Because they're not going to replace anybody.
Right.
They're just going to decide, no, we're good.
Unless you have a front office that is completely inept, which we don't. I mean, people will argue, but we don't.
No.
They have a list of players already lined up that they're going to shoot for the moment that opportunity comes up or is needed. It's not like it's going to be Almada or bust. There are other players.
No, they've shown it throughout their history. I mean, you knew Miguel Almiron was going to go after the second year, and you had already brought in Ezequiel Barco, and you invested heavily in him. And look, it took 3 years, I think, for him to show the level that he could be. And his last season here, he was outstanding when he came back.
Never forget post-Olympic Barco.
It's just unbelievable. I mean, he was on another planet. Pity Martinez, once he got, I think, embedded into the team, the second half of 2019, Pity was good. You talk about one of the best chance creators and goal scorers. Like when you look at shot created actions, he was top 5 in MLS down the stretch. He was huge. And I'll always remember that last goal in an empty Mercedes-Benz Stadium, that last game for him against Nashville, where, I mean, he scores 2 golazos now. It was a great goal, great game. You're always looking ahead. So you have to prepare for that. And you then have to have a little bit of good luck and hoping that somebody doesn't need a whole lot of time. Almada, I think, needed about half the season to get going and calibrate to the league, because you have to. And again, like you said, it's not FIFA. It's not FIFA where you just bring somebody in and they fit because the leagues are all the same on FIFA. Here, you got to different weather conditions. You got to get used to a different playing style. You got to get used to a different way the game is refereed. You got to get used to a lot of things. And I think you saw first half Thiago and second half Thiago look very different last year. And I think you would expect that for anybody coming in. You want them to be able to produce a little bit when they first come in, but it's hard to be as good as you can be straight out of the gate when you've never played in this league. So that's any league. It's not because MLS is the best league in the world. It's definitely not the worst league in the world. And it's not easy to walk into and understand how it plays. You're not going to, as good as Thiago Almada is, and he might be the most talented player to ever wear an Atlanta United kit ever, all time, way after we're gone. He might be that guy. He didn't light the league on fire when he walked in the door. He was good, but he didn't light the league on fire, and he might be the most talented player that we ever have.
Yeah. So I want to, because Sydney's got something for you too, but I just wanted to get your opinion because I've been harping on it for weeks. Going back to Araujo, do you stick him on the left for a while and let him be more of a playmaker with that left foot? Put Etienne on the right. I mean, you got Caleb going out now for a month, roughly. You're gonna have to maybe change some things up there anyway. Do you force that left foot to be more of a playmaker foot than a Golasso foot? Because we have seen that is not quite working right now.
I don't. Maybe. I mean, I'm not opposed to it. I don't know if that's the issue with him. But that does unlock things in the attack, and what you have to figure out, because you have to factor the fullbacks into this too. And when you talk about the wingers and what they do in their positioning, Araujo being inverted and Etienne being inverted really works well. And a lot of teams around the world play inverted wingers because they want their fullbacks to go. And I think, especially with Brooks, you want him to have that space out wide. So if Etienne is there, you still want him to come inside. And what it can create in some ways, if you get that chemistry the way you want, is you have Lennon making the overlapping runs down the right. Now he's underlapped a little bit more this year, but he's still an overlapping fullback. That's his characteristic. That's his personality as a player. On the left side, if you have Araujo there and you want him to stretch the field, you want him to put in crosses, you want him to stretch wide, that actually works because Gutman, we know, likes to make the underlapping runs. So that works on that side. What you need to have happen on the opposite side, and you got to think about Thiago in this as well, you've got to have a pocket where Thiago can go find, and that's going to be really to the left or the right of the forward. And I think what Thiago we've seen, he likes to be to the left to come in on the right. He likes to pick up the ball to the left side of the goal and come into the right and open up with the right foot or hit the big switch. So, okay, you got to be careful about getting too many people in that space. But what it opens up potentially, and I do like this idea, is Etienne almost as a second forward in a way when he tucks in. And you want him to play kind of off of Giacomakis' shoulder in this scenario where, you want him to stay out of that space. He's got to react to the runs that Yorgos makes, but then he can make corresponding runs. So let's say Lennon makes your overlapping play down the right. He's looking for the cross. Yorgos is your point person. He's going to make the first decision. He's going to make the first call, first read. If he goes near post, then Etienne from his right wing position where he's tucked in has to go back post. If Yorgos stays to the back post, Etienne's got to make a hard run to the near post. He's got to read that and run off of it. And I think that creates a lot of interesting possibilities because I kind of like him in those spaces. So yeah, it's not a bad idea. I don't think it unlocks Araujo. I don't think that's the issue. But can it be really good for this team when you don't have Caleb Wiley up high and you're trying to get Araujo and Etienne going? Because you need to get both of them going more than they are. Maybe that's a way to do it. Maybe that's a way to change it up, but still play to the strengths of your fullbacks going forward, which is a really important part of this team.
So when you look at Charlotte, still kind of newer club in the league in MLS compared to Atlanta, and this could be a larger point about soccer in the Southeast, Nashville. I'll throw in the Florida teams, Miami and Orlando, even though the further south you go, Florida, the further north you get. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And we talked about it, Orlando kind of felt a little, some people felt, it's a little manufactured. But when you look at Nashville, I mean, there are a number of Atlanta fans in Nashville. I was there among them. You look at Charlotte, a lot of Atlanta fans in Charlotte. I imagine a lot of Charlotte fans will be, they get a trip to Atlanta. We were talking to Keith earlier about, Cascadia, which he's called a number of times in his career, El Trafico. Where can Atlanta, Charlotte as a derby end up as it compares to others in MLS?
I think the three-way with Nashville can be the best in MLS. I don't think it's far off because, I mean, just look at the numbers. Like, you're going to draw – you don't open up the upper deck, you're going to draw up to 45 in Atlanta. You have your normal soccer configuration in Charlotte. You're going to draw between 35 or 30 and 35. I think you could probably stretch it closer to 40. Nashville, you're going to have up to 30. There were, and if I remember the numbers correctly, and we talked about them on air, so it's not anything that's private. I think there were over 2,000 away tickets that were claimed for the Nashville game from Atlanta fans. It wasn't quite that many for Charlotte. It was actually a good number went to Miami. That was surprising. I wonder how Orlando will match up with that. And look, Miami might have been unique this time with Josef going there and just where it fell in the calendar. It was a good opportunity to go for a weekend if you wanted to go, that kind of stuff. But Atlanta, Charlotte, Nashville. I mean, you want me to be completely transparent here. I think it already is in terms of sheer numbers, right there alongside anything in the league. Will it ever get the credit that it deserves? Probably not nationally, because nationally it's always going to be looked down on being in the South. Flat out, it's going to be. You heard all the comments when Atlanta came into the league. There's always an element of looking down your nose at it. And you're going to have the old timers who say that Cascadia is the best by far. You're going to have the Northeasterners who say that whatever permutation you want of Red Bull and DC and Philly and all that's the best. I think when you get the traveling numbers and the passion and the just scratching the surface of it right now with Atlanta, Charlotte, and Nashville and two teams in large venues. And if I'm Nashville, I would not hesitate when their new stadium opens up to maybe rent it for these games, or at least one of them each year, to have a big spectacle when Atlanta or Charlotte comes to town. The Nashville-Charlotte part of it's got to grow. I think Atlanta, everybody wants to love or hate Atlanta. Like, it's just, and they were the first ones, so you have that element. But Nashville and Charlotte need some animosity. And I think the kind of unique element of this out of tragedy is Atlanta and Charlotte fans, I think, are going to be bonded together in a different way because of Anton Walks. And that's another element to the rivalry / camaraderie, which is how I think it feels so far with these three teams. There is rivalry. I think Atlanta, Nashville, I mean, that was a good, intense game up there. It was, if you're watching that as a neutral and you don't know who it is and you don't know the history of the teams and you turn that on national TV, you're going to be like, oh, okay, that's pretty intense. Pretty good. Went down to the wire. Could have went either way. Okay, cool. I like this. Atlanta, Charlotte, you had intensity straight out of the gate. Like, you're already getting that on the field. And I think the good thing is you don't have Montreal, Toronto fighting in the stands between them, which is good.
I was just about to say that.
Yeah, you don't have that.
Let's not fight, but
no, you don't need any of that. What you need is the SEC kind of feel to it, honestly. It just means more, right? You need that where, I remember going to Baton Rouge as a Georgia fan, and you park your car and you're walking towards the stadium and it's, we're going to kill you tonight or whatever. Come have some of our jambalaya, and you go over and you have a beer and you talk a little trash back and forth and you toast. And then after the game, it's the same thing. Like, that's what this should be. And I think that's what this rivalry can be. Question is, what is it going to get called and how does it continue to grow? And does it ever get recognized the way that it should nationally? I fear that it won't, and that's fine. I think we'll all know the real story down here and know what it really is, because these games are special. And I can't wait for both of those teams to come to Atlanta and see how it feels.
Yeah, agreed. Well, we cut you loose in a little bit, Jason. Always a pleasure to have you on, but we have some business to take care of, and I will take it over to Tommy to, I guess, take care of that business.
Business.
Yeah, we've been running this contest now for a week. Carmen Diego, not Carmen San Diego, Carmen Diego, hooked us up with a Peach Atlanta United pin, and we've been asking our listeners to share on Instagram and Twitter, and then anybody that's chatted in here. So we got the wheel of fortune here, the wheel of names, to figure out who is going to win. I don't know if anybody can bring it up for me real quick.
There we go.
There we go.
Wheel, it is a literal wheel of names. That's
Wheel
awesome.
names.
Yeah. Now you just need
The
to do
greatest-
your Wheel of Fortune voice.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Wheel of
can't do
Fortune
it.
voice.
I am more of the Vanna White, person here.
No, you're not. No, you're not, Tommy. No, you're not.
Definitely not, Tom. Oh, McAllister, you have
Bo.
won.
Look at
There you go.
That was beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's as
Well,
easy
congratulations, Bo. We'll get your
Yes.
information. I don't know if you have a mailman out there, because he says he lives in the middle of the woods, and that's what he brags about, and he has no contact with human
in
beings.
Alabama. You gotta,
Is
you
in
gotta
he
add
Alabama.
on the
Alabama
mail
part.
route? Bo, are you on the mail route, or do we have to send
Yeah.
like DHL out to find you?
I think he would probably want us to send a drone, so
Yeah.
we might have to do that.
We'll get you taken care of one way or another, Bo.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll figure out. He's a big guy that hops on our spaces after every game, and
That's awesome.
he has very, very strong opinions of the game. So
100%.
as you get with your tweets after your shows. So
Look, there's nothing wrong with that, and what you guys do, you provide a great forum for it, and it's important, like the work that you guys put in. And I know at times it probably feels like a lot of work, but I hope you know the impact that you guys have on the fan base. And look, it's
Thank you.
special. I mean, when I see at high school games, high school kids do an Atlanta United chants for their school, that's amazing. When,
That's awesome.
I'm looking down in the stands and it's, Thiago Almada jerseys and Miles Robinson jerseys. And
Yeah.
I think I saw a Gutman jersey. Like it's awesome that you're seeing all of this. The growth at the high school level is insane. Since this started, the growth of the youth game is insane. It's all taken off. And yeah, get angry, get mad, whatever, like however you feel. But also sometimes take a deep breath and just realize that what you're seeing with what is here now. And like, I have a different perspective because I went through multiple years of whether it's the Ruckus or the Silverbacks thinking the team was going to die that offseason and never come back. So I'm eternally grateful that I don't have to worry about that again. And that doesn't mean that it's okay not to win every game. I wish you could, but it's also impossible. Sometimes just take a deep breath and don't get consumed by the toxicity, because it's easy to, whether it's social media or whatever, it's easy to get consumed by it. Don't be cynical. Don't fall into that trap. Don't always expect the other shoe to drop.
That never happens in Atlanta, Jason.
Yeah, but
Ever.
it doesn't make
city.
it, but it doesn't make it okay that it does, and that's the part
Right,
that I'm always
right.
going to fight against. I will leave you guys with this: like, if I could ask everybody out there to go watch Conan O'Brien's speech on his last Tonight Show and his comments about cynicism, and go watch that and memorize it, and it is absolutely words to live by. And doesn't mean you can't be frustrated about a loss or a result, but
Right.
also don't allow it to make you cynical about the game, about the team, about any of it, about the experience. Everybody out there, you guys, the fans, you're all needed in a big way against Charlotte on Saturday, because you get off to a good start against that team in that building. I don't think they have any prayer of coming back. And the more that the crowd is energized, the better the chances are of that big start early on. You guys have an impact on this team, so please use that power for good.
100%.
Yeah.
We try. The Spaces is a fun, when we started this is before the podcast was, we wanted to do this because Spaces is just an opportunity for everybody. We get people overseas that hop on at, crazy times to just talk about the game. And I think that's the most fun part. I'm in Ohio,
Scottish
so I love
people that we
talking
can't
to
understand.
people in Atlanta that were at the game. Like, there's people in traffic trying to get out that want to talk about, the win or the loss. And I think that's just the most fun, is just being able to hop on and hear those reactions. And like, we did the Josef, like as soon as Josef was announced, did the Spaces. It was so much fun just talking to everybody, talking about their favorite Josef moment. And I think that's just what it's all about, is just connecting everybody. And that's a big part of our Spaces.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I hope that it's connecting out of joy very soon, and hopefully Saturday.
Less therapy.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, look, you get back home, you're going to be favored in these next two games, and it's time to produce. You had two tough games on the road where if you play better, I think you walk away with some points in those last two. And you didn't miss it by a ton. You didn't get played off the park. You didn't get blown out. You didn't look horrible. You didn't look good enough to win. And at home, you're expected to win. So let's see what happens in these next 2 games. And hopefully you see number 7 up top being a factor in it.
Yeah, agreed. Good to be back home. I'm sure you're looking forward to calling a match. Mercedes-Benz Stadium for the first time in forever.
Yeah, I mean, 1 out of the last 5 at home. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So hopefully you get momentum with these 2 at home, and hopefully it's a great turnout on Saturday, and it's loud.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
We
Jason,
appreciate
always.
it, Jason.
Yep.
Thanks for having me on, y'all. Appreciate it.
Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. See ya.
Yep.
Use your power for good. Use your power for good. This is how we start.
Everybody has homework now.
Every Spaces.
Conan.
It's a good
Conan
speech.
O'Brien.
Like, I've watched it many times.
I have not seen it. I got to watch it.
I think I saw it.
The whole episode's great. The whole last episode's fantastic.
Yeah, and look, because I've been keeping on the chat, and the fact that there can even be the arguments in the chat on Twitter, you should be happy to be a part of it, because even right now we have people all over this country that are in the chat right now, and that's a good thing. We're not Sporting Kansas City, right? We're not, San Jose. Not knocking on San Jose, but they haven't been super relevant up until recently. But at the end of the day, the fan base is great. We say it all the time. Lucky to be a part of it, and if it weren't for the fan base, we wouldn't be doing this.
Yeah, and we don't have to agree on everything. I mean, but that's what's great about sports. Everyone has an opinion, and it's not life or death whether you agree with it. It's not life or death whether you think somebody is full of it or if you think somebody is spot on. I mean, let's just be respectful of others' opinions, and let's not let this thing become consuming of our lives, essentially. It's sports. It's supposed to be fun.
No, Atlanta United is life. I don't know what you're talking about, Sydney.
Really?
This is everything.
I disagree, Tyler. Disagree. 100%. Couple things before, little housekeeping notes, and I don't know if we had any more about Saturday or not. A few housekeeping notes. Predictions, yes. Let's do that first. Let's do predictions first. I predict a result. No, I'm just kidding. Either win, loss, or draw. Yeah, I guess I'll kick us off prediction-wise, and then we'll get to our little housekeeping notes. Giakoumakis has been training this week, so at least for now, as we're on the air, all signs point to him at least having some effect on the match. I don't know if he'll start on Saturday or not. I feel like he won't, just because he isn't quite match fit after having not played for the past several matches. But I think at some point we will see him, and I think, gosh, I mean, I'm kind of leaning 2-1 Atlanta United. I feel it'll be 1-1. I feel Charlotte will score first, probably. Atlanta will eventually level it. I'm going to say Almada levels it for Atlanta, and then Giakoumakis scores late to get Atlanta back in the win column.
So you think Charlotte scores first?
I kind of feel Charlotte scores first, to be honest with you. It'll be a hostile environment. I mean, they'll be looking to continue their climb, I guess, up the table. They beat NYCFC, I believe, last week. They'll be kind of riding high on that, as well as the win against Orlando in the Open Cup. So, yeah, they've been a little better run. I mean, they got blown out by DC, but again, they beat NYCFC, beat Orlando in the Open Cup, and now we kind of, I guess, riding that high a little bit into Atlanta. So I think maybe they score first, Atlanta levels it probably right after, and then Giakoumakis scores the winner in the second half at some point. Just my opinion. We'll see.
4-1, baby. 4-1. Four
That's
goals for us,
about.
1 goal for Charlotte. We gotta get something going. We got to. And like we didn't even bring it
Indeed.
up. The Chicago game also was trash. Like we
Yeah.
can't forget
No, it
the shot.
was.
Everybody like we won that game, but that game was miserable. We should not have
Yeah.
won that game. We should have lost that game 3-1. We've been on a 4-game bad stretch of soccer. The vibes are going to be back. They're back home, like Jason said, 4-1. Ric Flair, woo. You're up, Tyler.
Woo! I
Woo.
like that. I was going to say 4-0.
Whoa.
I'm coming in hot too. Look, Clement Diop or Quentin.
You're melting my
Westbrook-
screen, Tyler. You're so hot. Good grief.
Whoa.
4-0.
Whoa.
I mean,
What?
prediction wise.
No, look. One of the goalkeepers need a clean sheet. There has to be some kind of defensive. Like you have you have Miles Robinson. Miles Robinson needs a clean sheet. Westberg needs a clean sheet. Diop.
Diop.
It'll be Diop, I think. But whoever it is, that defense needs a clean sheet. They need to get some confidence back. But at the same time, like this attack should be able to run all over Charlotte. And we haven't even talked about Charlotte's
Should be.
We haven't even talked about Charlotte's Open Cup. The fact that they have tons of injuries right now. They're coming in on short rest. There's a lot of factors going completely against Charlotte in this match. So if you're Atlanta and you do not win here, then there's a bigger issue for sure. You should win. You should run them off the field relatively. But I'm going to say 4-0. I think Giacomakis gets a brace, and I think he's going to beat Taylor Twellman's record. And I think Almada, and I'm going to say it, I think Araujo gets one.
Finally get off the schneid, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a little ambitious, but okay. Hey, I mean, hopefully.
I need it. You're going to make it for the
Hopefully.
last 3 games.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, real quick, 2 things. The watch along. I mean, for our patrons, we've been talking about it for the last few weeks. May 20th against Chicago Fire when Atlanta are on the road. That'll be our next watch along party. Available to our $10 patrons, $10 a month patrons. So go to patreon.com/scarves and spikes. I'll put the URL, or we'll put the URL in the chat if you're watching. If you're on the podcast, of course, you can type it in, patreon.com/scarves and spikes. For our $10 patrons, we also have $1.17 tiers, $5 tiers. We're hoping to get some really big things planned over the next few weeks and months for our patrons. So patreon.com/scarves and spikes. And again, $10 a month patrons will get a link at some point before May 20th to an exclusive watch along party with Tyler and Tommy. I will not be there. I may pop in, but I will not be there.
Tell them where you're going to be at. Sydney.
I will be in Sweden on May 20th. I'll be in Sweden on May 20th.
I was Canadian. I sounded Canadian, not Sweden. That was my bad. Oh, no, I don't know.
You went high and right with the.
Yeah.
Usually when I do an accent, it turns to Borat somehow. Like that's like my weakness is like you just tell me do this impression. It'll go straight to Borat. So it's a fail. Go back to Sweden. Sorry.
No, but yeah, I'll be there. While Atlanta United are up in Chicago, I mean, I may pop in. It's going to be like 6 hours ahead, but we'll see depending on how tired I am. But yeah, Tyler and Tommy will be holding it down. Again,
I think the
Patreon
game is at like 8:30 at night.
is it 8:30 or
I think it's
probably
8:30.
8:30. That's
So
right.
it's gonna be like
That's
what,
right.
4:00 in the morning there.
2 o'clock in the morning. I mean, we'll see.
I just set an
We'll see.
alarm.
Is it only 6
Yeah.
hours for real?
6 hours.
It just seems like so much further. Anyway, well, I mean, by the time
But
the game's over,
Yeah.
Yeah, right. But
Right.
our watch along was a ton of fun last time. We had about 10 people that came on. We send you a Zoom link. You hop on. We were all having drinks. You know, Sydney was doing shots of water. Tyler was passing out on spaces.
it was a busy night.
we got to throw all the dirty out there. But yeah,
Hey, man.
Tyler and I went on spaces afterwards. He was falling asleep, but it was a fun time. We'll give away some stuff as well while
More
we're on
stuff
there.
from Carmen and Diego. for sure.
Yeah, we'll be giving away probably another pin. Anybody that comes in, that's a big thing about what we want to do with our Patreon is we want to give back. So some of that money that we do get, we take it right back out, and we give you. There's a crazy thing in the chat. Not going to say that out loud, but we like to give back, so we like to give away some prizes as well. So come hang out with us and watch the Chicago game.
Yes, please do. I will be probably sleeping, but maybe we'll see. We'll see how I'm feeling.
We'll wake you up if we win.
Yeah, that's
we'll
point
give
number
your phone
one.
Number out on the Zoom for everybody calls you.
Do not do that. Please do not do that. Yeah, no, don't do that. Second of all, oh man. Okay, this is going off the rails. Second off, I'm caught off track now. Okay, let's get it together. Next week, Atlanta United play on Wednesday night, and that means that we will not be podcasting on Wednesday night. We'll be podcasting, I believe, on Tuesday night, yes? Tuesday night, 7 p.m.? Is that what we have decided?
You guys will be. I will be at Blink 182.
Ooh.
Yes. I will be rocking out to all the small things.
Yes.
All
the small things.
Videos.
Say so.
My wife's favorite.
Maybe I'll just show up at the. I got front row, so I'll just hump up in the front row, and I'll give you guys a show.
I'm here for it.
Yes. Yeah. So Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Tyrell and I will be here. I'm not sure who the guest will be just yet, but we'll let you know, obviously, on our socials. And yeah, spaces after the match on Saturday.
Yep.
I believe that's it. Did I miss anything?
If you guys
by the way, if you're listening on the podcast, it'll be on the podcast feed, obviously.
Yeah.
Tuesday night. But yeah.
If y'all really want Dom Dwyer to come back, you should let the front office know. I'm just saying. For a reason.
Yeah.
For a reason. Anyway, carry on. I've got that little.
That's not a Blink 182 lyric, though.
It's not.
That's a Queen lyric. No. Carry on. Carry on. Anyway. I think that's it, yeah?
Card.
Yellow Card.
That was a good band.
It was. I mean, not many bands have a violinist.
Exactly.
I am the pop punk, like,
yeah,
all of knowledge of all the pop punk. So that's my entire summer. Fall Out Boy, Weezer, Blink 182. That's me. Offspring, Sum 41. That's my summer. If I'm missing, if I'm not at a show, if I'm not on one of our shows, I'm at a pop punk concert. So
is this the 2000s?
Reliving my 2000s. I'm reliving right when I graduated. I graduated 2001. That's what I was rocking out to, and we're back. The 2000s are back.
I was gonna say, I feel like I'm back in college with all these bands you're throwing out, Tommy.
Yep.
Maybe our next Patreon AMA or special episode, favorite bands of the 2000s. We'll think about it.
I'll be great.
We'll think about it. Yeah, I think that's it. Tyler's at Lincoln Park. Yeah, I mean, we'll keep throwing them out there. No Nickelback though, or Creed. Tyler's at ATL Pilgrim. Tommy's at Tommy ATL 96. I'm at SH Wright. We are at Scars N, letter N Spikes on Twitter. Scarves and Spikes on Instagram. And yes, keep following us for content all week long, even when we are off the air. Of course, Atlanta Soccer Podcast Network if you want to hear the audio version of this show. But that's it. We are out of here for another week, and we will see you on Spaces, Twitter Spaces on Saturday, and live here next Tuesday on the podcast. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And we'll see you next time. So long.
As Creed would say, so let's go then.
I love it. Go watch you some Open Cup.
All right.
Yes, watch the Open Cup.
I'll sing higher as we go off to our own music.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Can you take me high? I can't do it. So let's go then.
Keep it going.
I'm running out of. All I know is can it take you higher?
That's all he knows. My
That's all I know.
sacrifice.
So, that was a banger too.
Wow.